Premier Danielle Smith. She is denying that she urged the U.S. government to interfere in the Canadian federal election. This weekend, an interview she did with Breitbart, which is a right-wing U.S. media company, drew some attention. So take a listen to what the Premier of Alberta said when asked if Canadians are likely to vote Conservative.
Before the tariff war, I would say yes. I mean, Pierre Poilievre is the name of the Conservative Party leader, and he was miles ahead of Justin Trudeau. But because of the what we see as unjust and unfair tariffs, it's actually caused an increase in the support for the Liberals. And so that's what I fear, is that the longer this dispute goes on, politicians posture, and it seems to be benefiting the Liberals right now. So I would hope that we could put things on pause, is what I've told administration officials. Let's just put things on pause so we can get through an election. Let's have the best person at the table make the argument for how they would deal with it, and I think that's Pierre Poilievre.
Okay, so as I said, Smith is denying accusations as she asked the U.S. administration to interfere in Canadian politics, even though she kind of said it there in terms of calibrating what they're doing. Her office gave a statement saying any suggestion the Premier is asking the U.S. to interfere in Canada's election is offensive and false. So some of the party leaders addressed Smith's comments on the campaign trail today.
I'm wondering if you feel these comments are appropriate.
Are which?
Appropriate.
Well, people are free to make their own comments. I speak for myself.
I think it is shameful. If you break down what Danielle Smith is proposing, she's talking about taking steps to harm the Liberals and to prevent tariffs in a political manner to create a political outcome.
The President is waiting for the outcome of the election and see who has a strong mandate from Canadians, or who has a mandate from Canadians. Is it someone who is, to quote Danielle Smith, who's in sync with him, or is it someone who's going to stand up for Canadians?
Okay, Danielle Smith, we did reach out to her office to invite her on the show today. We never got a response, as she did cancel a public event she was having. Lisa, you know, the plain reading of what she said is calibrate your response throughout the campaign to avoid electing Liberals. And then she suggested in another segment of that interview that Pierre Poilievre would be more in sync with Donald Trump. I mean, what message does that send the Canadians when the First Minister of Alberta is saying things like that on U.S. radio and apparently to the U.S. administration, according to her?
Yeah, and I don't know if I can explain what she said or what she didn't say. This is the way I look at it. I think what she was trying to say, even though I said I'm not going to explain it, but to be generous, I'm going to say that she was probably bringing out the point that what's happening in the United States vis-a-vis tariffs is having an impact on the trajectory and discussion around the Canadian general election. Yep. And she personally thinks it would have been going in a different direction, but for this, and would you stop saying that? I think that's kind of what the thrust of it was. But the weird part is that, you know, let's say that Donald Trump's administration comes out and says, I understand Canada's in the middle of an election and we're going to put pause on all the tariffs right now. We're not moving ahead on April 2. Who takes the credit for that? Melanie Joly takes the credit for that, right? Or Dominic LeBlanc takes the credit for that. If you think about it, right? If there is it doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help the Conservatives. It helps the Liberals if there is some kind of a pause in how the Americans are dealing with us vis-a-vis the tariff. So it's one of those comments where I don't know whether or not she was understanding the entirety of the comments that she was making at the moment, because I don't follow through on it being particularly beneficial to the Conservatives. Because I would take, if I were in the Liberals, right, I would take a victory lap on being the ones that were able to negotiate that.
Well, she said this in the interview on the 8th of March, Rob. So it was the day before Mark Carney won the leadership. It just took a while to percolate.
You want to tell? There's a tell. There's no public pointing. She never told anybody that this was there. Usually when premiers do these kinds of interviews, they tell people in the gallery, I did this interview today, and people go and look and they listen. That's right. There's a tell there. You've done a marvelous job. I think that they should engage you. But let's. I mean.
But a tell in what way? I'm interested. A tell in that she didn't want anyone to know.
She didn't publicize the fact that she'd appeared. Usually, when a politician goes,
Breitbart is huge, though.
I realize
every
that.
time Doug Ford was on CNN, we got a press release.
Yeah.
Right?
So usually premiers and politicians say, "This is what's on my agenda today. Here's what I'm doing." There's that. Danielle Smith is, I think, a talented communicator. She was an open line host for a long, long time. I think that she's a very, very good communicator. So when she speaks, I mean, we all slip up, but I think that she said not one, but two things that were also tells. She didn't say, get rid of the tariffs. She said, pause. It's like stifle, muffle, attenuate. Don't get rid of them. She said, pause, okay? Again, these are important distinctions that I think it's important for people to realize. It's a 36-day campaign.
Yeah.
Days are precious. There's now been 2 days where the Conservative leader has had to answer questions about this issue. There are 34 days left. Is he happy about that? No.
No.
There's
Well,
another
like
tell
the
as well.
plain reading of what she said is, it seems to be benefiting the Liberals right now. So I would hope that we could put things on pause, is what I've told administration officials. She is saying she has said this to the Trump administration,
That's right.
citing the benefit of this to the Liberals, and later said if Pierre Poilievre wins, he would be very much in sync with the new direction in America. Now, I'm sure Pierre Poilievre didn't want her to say that, given everything. But, Vandana, how do you view this? That she is the Premier of a Canadian province, and she's making this call to administration officials, in her own words, saying to calibrate the response to help her preferred electoral outcome here.
For someone who's a good political, has great political acumen, it was a stupid move. And I think that's why, to Rob's point, she didn't share it. I think a couple things, I look at Doug Ford in comparison going to the U.S. and fighting for Canada as a whole. Not just Ontario, but Canada. He went as a united front, and he's never got political about it. And people want that from the elected officials. And I think, for having dealt with a lot of issues, I tell people, if you're dealing with an issue on campaign, just deal with it. Answer it honestly, and then move on and just take the hit. Mr. Poilievre had an opportunity to do that. So if you didn't denounce it, it leaves open questions as to what does that mean? Does that mean you're okay with it? Does it mean that there are connections between your party and Donald Trump's party? Is there and things that he doesn't want to associate with? So I think a full-out denouncement would have been preferred, because then you can cut that notion out. By the way, people will think about that.
Right. So, Brad, there are these comments, right, that Premier Smith has made, and we saw Dan Arnold, who used to do polling for the Liberals, saying the Liberal Party should pay for a media tour for Danielle Smith for the whole 36 days. We've seen candidates being appointed by the Conservatives, and old selfies of them and Make America Great Again hats are being brought out. This is a thing that they're going to need to deal with throughout the campaign, because on the socials, it seems this will have traction, and you've now got audio of the Premier of Alberta, right? It's attack ad gold.
It is. It does write itself. So I think that this does have legs. We were talking earlier, will the second French language debate carry on? No. But I think this does, and this is why. Because you have one of Canada's top conservatives in Danielle Smith basically saying to an extremely right-wing media outlet in Breitbart that Poilievre's your man for the Trump administration. We'll handle this later, but right now what you're doing is you're hurting, because Canadians don't trust Poilievre with tariffs, so put the tariffs away for now until we can get elected, and then we can pick up the conversation. That is... I think at one point it seeks to invite a foreign government to participate in some way in the outcome of our election campaign, because it's asking them to change their policy, not because we want to save Canadian jobs, but because we want an electoral outcome. And if you want this outcome, Trump administration, then listen to me as... Yeah, and you're right. She is the Premier of Alberta and a top conservative. She's a fantastic communicator. But when she goes into a very cozy environment like Breitbart, where she maybe felt too relaxed to let certain truths in her mind slip out, she says these two things. One, Poilievre's your man to the Trump people. And two, if you want to help us win this election, you got to put the ice on the tariffs. That is, I think, that every Canadian. And so, to Lisa, our point earlier, when we're talking about, you got Poilievre down in the GTA talking about crime and not the issue of the day, which is Trump and the tariffs. This is why. And in fact, I would submit that it's probably better for Poilievre to go hard after Trump, to fight against this perception that now Danielle Smith has put right dead smack in the middle of the opening days of this campaign.
Max Bernier would love that, don't you think? Because one of their first moves, Max, I know, maybe he's on he's on all these podcasts and stuff that are in that same ecosystem as Breitbart. But I go back to one of the first moves that they really tried to do when Poilievre became leader, is they went out to that Manitoba by-election to crush Max Bernier, because he wanted to remove the People's Party and that 3 to 4% potential bleed and consolidate it. Are you captured by that in any way, Brad? Just quickly.
Yeah, one of the things that he did, and Smith did this in Alberta as well. You got to steer to the right quickly, take care of the fringe right, bring them back into the conservative tent, and then go and fight for the middle. So this is all going to be bad because he's eventually going to have to, she or he will have to explain this, and there's no way that the opposition parties are going to let this go because this is gold.
Okay, we are going to take a break and wrap up the panel in just a second. But Lisa, I want to give you the last word here. I mean, if you are the Conservatives, and you know the Trump questions are probably going to persist because the Liberals keep making it a thing, and seemingly an ally like Danielle Smith makes it a thing. What do you get? How do you get on top of it, and in a way that you don't do self-harm?
Well, I would say that if there's any political leader out there who is accusing any other political leader of not being patriotic to the country or not being patriotic enough, they're really toying in a very dangerous area. Because
we've seen that already, though, haven't we? Like, you sent jobs to the U.S. I mean, that like it's all like.
But a patriotism. I mean, in terms of trying to incite, foreign government interference.
Sure, I got you. I got you. I got you there. I got your point there.
If we start going down that wedge of saying that X is not a patriot or X is really in it for American, I mean, that's a wedge too far, in my opinion, and a pox on the houses of anyone who thinks that they're going to go in that direction. Whether or not it's gold, I don't know. Whether or not it's gold, I don't know. But if they want to I hate it when we wedged on COVID, and I'll hate it even more if we wedge on Canadian patriotism. I think that's a bridge way too far. And even though, I would ask the better angels of all the parties, which is saying a lot, to remember at the end of the day, we need to come out intact as a country. And when you attack one, you're attacking more than one.
But just quickly, isn't the whole allegation on Carney's assets that you would sell out the interests of the country for the interests of your assets and your blind trust?
And how many times have I heard Mark Carney say that Pierre Poilievre is going to get on his knees in front of Donald Trump? Not fair.
The Conservative Party of Canada has run pretty aggressive television ads. You want to talk about playing fair and listening to our better angels? Sure, but like you folks, the Conservative Party of Canada ran ads against Jagmeet Singh and about the way he dresses and stuff like that. You folks knuckle fights here. Come on,
very quickly,
now
David.
You're calling for.
I'll tell you why I was surprised.
In this frame, absolutely, I am.
Yeah. I was just surprised because she thought she could convince administration officials that not to do this to help Mr. Poilievre. If she thought she could convince them, this negates the entire thought of Mr. Trump having this, up until now, submerged preference for liberal prime ministers. What happens to that notion? I thought he loved liberal prime ministers. Why is she trying to convince him to help a conservative? I'm confused.
Look,
maybe she needs to convince him because he does like the liberals.
He's hidden it brilliantly so
far. Right. Well, look, reading the mind of Donald Trump. Good luck. Yeah, exactly. They orchestrated the U.S. election. All right, look, we got to leave it there. That was a fun rockin' hour of TV. I want to thank the Power Panel for this expanded election edition. Vandana Cotter, Lisa Raitt, Brad Levine, and Rob Russo. But